Hello and welcome back to Processing the Process, where we capture and discuss the technical, psychological, and contextual dynamics that shape the process of creating a work of art in both the performing arts and the business world. This week by week, I should say, we are following Anthony Mangone, owner of Trattoria 632 in Purchase, New York, as he navigates the internal struggles and external circumstances that impact the development of his restaurant business. Last week, Anthony candidly spoke about the painful feelings every member of his family experienced during that long wait between indictment and sentencing. He also took us on a harrowing journey, if you will, through the first few weeks of prison and the unexpected friendships and personal growth he also experienced during that time. This week, we start to delve into the development of Anthony's restaurant business. We'll compare the skills needed to succeed in the political realm with those needed to succeed in the restaurant business. We will then begin by fleshing out Anthony's unique approaches and philosophies that have made Trattoria 632 as successful as it is. Anthony, if we look back on your career in law and politics, we can see that you developed many particular skills fine-tuned by your experience that I think are transferable to virtually any profession. So even though you knew, as you said, almost next to nothing about the restaurant business, you found that your competencies were not only transferable to the restaurant business, they actually became the hallmark of Anthony's success. So I thought we would do a side-by-side comparison of competencies, looking at them in the political realm, and I'll take on that role, and the restaurant realm,
Sure.
which will be you. And I think it will become evident that the same competencies are necessary for both. First of all, one critical element that I have learned from Anthony is that politics is a retail business. You have to learn how to connect with your constituents, develop strong relationships with them, and realize that the key to forming those bonds is figuring out what they need and being able to provide and meet those needs. I feel as if this is exactly what you have to do in the restaurant business.
Undoubtedly, it's a retail business, the same way politics is, particularly local politics. It's important to be able to connect with your constituency and your customer base. And I felt that when I finally did take control of the reins here at Trattoria 632, I was able to see a nexus between the two worlds.
Yes.
Ultimately being able to touch each customer, which is as important as touching each constituent, making sure that you are trying your best to satisfy their needs. You're not always going to satisfy everyone's needs. It's no matter what business you're in.
Right.
But the more people that you can satisfy, whether it be making sure that the meal that you're providing is good, whether the personnel that work here are interacting with the clients, making sure they're comfortable, making sure delivery is on time, making sure their food comes out the way they ask for it, trying to adhere to whatever substitutions they may need. Those are all things that you need to be very malleable in this business to make sure that you're satisfying as many people as you possibly can.
And not only are you charged with figuring out what their needs are? But it seems even more than that when you were describing your political experiences, you have to anticipate what it is you think they're going to need and to meet those needs beyond expectation.
Absolutely. And, there is a science behind politics, right? And we just came out of a very busy election season. Every day now, as you get towards November, you'll hear people talking about polling numbers.
Yes.
And most elected officials, I would say 98% of them, live and die by how the polls show them. And it's scientific in nature. They're drafted in such a way, the questions, whether it be through focus groups or telephone polling, and the data that comes out of that information is ultimately how you carry your message. You want to make sure your message is penetrating and that there's a saturation rate, and how do you continue to make sure that you keep hitting that message so that your constituents continue to support you. And as you continue polling, you will see those numbers move accordingly. That's your hope, obviously.
Right.
Same thing here in the restaurant business. We have daily specials. We don't just pull those specials out of thin air.
Right.
We've noticed that there's a certain trend of success with certain ingredients, with certain products, with certain recipes. And we tend to make sure that all three of those items collectively together somehow find their way onto our special list. We wouldn't start putting fares on, we wouldn't start putting dishes on that didn't sell. And that therein lies the scientific nature of determining how in fact you're satisfying your customers on a menu basis, right?
Okay.
Same holds true in politics. You want to make sure that whatever message you're delivering, whether it be the introduction of legislation, how you're handling constituent services, whatever message that may be, whether you're pro-law enforcement, anti-law enforcement, whatever that may very well be, you see how that message is penetrating with your constituency vis-a-vis polling and focus groups, and that's how you determine what your message is going to be.
Right.
And that's what we've been, I think, successful in doing, and learning what our customers want and continuing to make sure that we build that base.
Exactly. And I would imagine keeping your ear to the ground, so to speak, to ensure that you're capturing the continual fluctuations in those desires and needs, I would imagine.
Very, very important. Being able to hear customer constructive criticism. You have to be able to look at a problem in a very micro level, and you need to address it, because if you don't address it at that micro, acute level, it tends to become like a spider web. And that was the problem prior to my taking over. I think we went into last time, there were problems in the delivery, there were problems in the servers, there were problems with our pizza area, there were problems with our kitchen. So collectively, the operation had gone completely off the rails.
Right.
You need to be able to address those issues individually before that becomes metastasizes and becomes a real problem.
Yes, exactly. And something I find interesting out of our conversations about politics was that you learned that connecting with your constituents was essentially predicated on being authentic and, you know, leading with genuine concern and interest.
Absolutely.
I would imagine it is the same in the restaurant
It
business?
is, and I think I've used this expression many times. You know, a fish rots from the head down, and if we at my family level are not interacting and learning what the heartbeat of our customer base is, that's going to trickle down to the rest of our team, and unfortunately will infect the clientele. So it is important to listen to what your customers are saying. you know right away if there's a problem. If you start to see numbers start to trend off,
Sure.
you have to start looking, where is the problem? And you start to listen to what people are telling you. There was an interesting time, I know you and I had a conversation one time, while I was away, my numbers were better than what I thought they were,
Right.
but there was a circumstance where my numbers, in fact, were down year over year, not terribly, but when I finally came back, there were customers that said to me, they missed you. We missed you. We missed,
Yes.
and you saw there were instances where maybe people were not on top of a table the way they should have, or they may not have had the same enthusiasm and energy on the floor that they normally have, or they didn't have, some of the creative specials that are normally there.
Okay.
And it just happens. There's nothing that anybody did wrong. It's just a matter of, when your eyes and ears are not there every day, there's going to be fall off at times.
Perhaps, as you say, inevitably.
Correct.
Working in the political arena requires that you operate with great intensity and at a whirlwind pace. So you really need to be creative, flexible, think quickly on your feet to problem solve, and realize that you're going to be bombarded by multiple demands all at the same time. Sound familiar?
Yes. Yeah. As I often say to a colleague of mine who was also involved in politics and also involved in the restaurant business, the similarities are glaring. Particularly the last 4 weeks of a campaign can be described as a Saturday evening in the restaurant business.
Right.
Because your head has to be on a swivel. You're getting maybe attack ads coming at you by your opponent. Your numbers may be tightening up. There may be a mistake that somebody made. You need to make sure your messages are getting out, your TV ads are getting out. There are a lot of moving parts. Well,
Right.
that same holds true in a restaurant business. I often tell people, if you really want to screw up a restaurant, have the dishwasher call in sick on a Saturday night.
Gosh.
And you would never imagine the disarray that could happen. And that's
Right,
very
right.
similar to the tempest and teapot circumstances that you're in when you're involved in a political race.
Wow. And as a politician, you had to manage a lot of people and a
Correct.
lot of different kinds of personalities and figure out how to navigate. Would that be the same
It
in
was.
your restaurant?
Yeah, I was very young. I think I mentioned last time I was chief of staff while I was still in law school.
Right,
I
right.
think we had something along the lines of about 40 employees, plus some other offices that we were interacting with at all times that came to us for guidance. And you're dealing with legislative aides, you're dealing with constituent services, you're dealing with press, you're dealing with people who are writing speeches, you're dealing with scheduling. And at any given moment, there could be something or someone that tries to blow up your race, so to speak. And the same holds true in a restaurant. There are so many moving parts that require you to have your finger on the pulse of every facet of the operation. If a terminal goes down, like that terminal over there went down on 2 Saturday nights ago,
Oh boy.
and we have a dining room full of people, it creates an enormous amount of hysteria. And you have to be able to guide your team with a sense of calmness so that they don't act hysterical.
Right.
Because the last thing that a customer wants to see when they're out enjoying an evening
Yes.
is a person who is working on their table that night hysterical. So you have to be able to operate as if nothing
Things-
can take you off kilter.
Right. Right.
And that's why when I look at these elected officials who are in these races, I know how they're feeling when they're being attacked, or in the alternative, they're under pressure answering questions at a debate, or they're out at a function and they're handshaking people, they are under such an enormous amount of pressure that the whole purpose is you never really understand it until you're actually in the soup, as they say. So it's very, very similar here. You know, we could have a situation in the kitchen where somebody forgot a dish on a plate, where the last thing you want to be able to do is go over to a table and be hysterical that they forgot to do something. You want to be able to show that everything's under control. You enjoy your night. Consider us just being here helping, making that night a success.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, you developed the ability to see both the big picture as well as its constituent parts, all the details necessary to run a campaign, for example. I imagine, again, it's the same in the business world. I mean, in the restaurant business, I should say.
Without a doubt. It requires attention to detail. Being able to understand what is most important at that particular moment to make sure that you prioritize all the different moving parts that are happening in the business. And it very well may be that you have a slew of deliveries that need to get out the door. Well, you have to figure out, pick your poison. What are we going to focus on in the kitchen tonight? Are we going to focus on making sure these deliveries get out? Or do we want to make sure that we get our appetizers out for a table that just walked in? There are so many different facets of the business that you have to make sure get done correctly. And it all starts with preparation. Same like a campaign. You have to be able to make sure that when that time comes, that you're able to react accordingly. So you don't just start running a campaign and on day one, you make sure you have the right team in place. And you make sure you have the right message in place, and you make sure you know where your weak spots are so that you can work on those weaknesses. Same holds true in the business side of it, particularly in the restaurant business. You don't just start by saying, I'm going to open up a restaurant. You look for what? You look for location. You look to make sure that you have the right team in place, the right kitchen staff in place, the right menu, making sure that when people walk in, they're comfortable. Those are all the intangibles that make a political race successful and make a restaurant successful. So there's got to be thought process that starts at every facet.
I would imagine that in order to prioritize, as you were describing before, that this is where that sort of macro, micro example really comes into play. I would imagine that, again, not only do you have to identify your moving parts, but be able to pull back the lens, see the big picture, understand relative importance, I guess. So I would imagine you would really have to have both of those sets of competencies.
Absolutely. And I think one of the problems that a lot of restaurants that struggle in this industry is because they don't have that ability to look at the big picture, and they only want to focus on the one micro issue, and they allow that issue to ultimately encumber them to a point where they can't do anything more. And that's where they find the struggles. I could tell you that when I first started this business, I had partners who were not in favor of doing delivery. Apparently, at some point in time, much prior to me being involved in this industry, delivering was, I guess, looked upon in the restaurant industry as being somewhat distasteful. That it kind of
déclassé.
Yeah, that lowered people's expectations of what type of restaurant you were if you in fact were delivering. Take it from I looked at my circumstances here, and I looked at the population, so to speak, and I knew that we had a state university across the street, and I knew that we had another college down the block. I knew that we had various area corporations. And I said, you know, these people are going to need someone to deliver food to them. They're not going to sit there and say, we're going to go in all the time. They're going to want us to come to them. I remember 11 years ago, there was no DoorDash, there was no Uber Eats, there was none of that. Everything was done by, if you had delivery service, you had to do it in-house. You had to hire your own delivery personnel, and you had to get the message out. Very similar to politics. You have to get your message out and let people know that you have, in fact, this service. And I never looked at it as being lowering our class of restaurant, because what I had also had the experience of was I had been doing a project in Manhattan, and I remember at a meeting one day, we ordered food from a very, very well-established restaurant, and I said, they deliver? They said, yeah, in Manhattan, all the restaurants deliver. And I remember sitting there saying, so Manhattan restaurants deliver, and I'm going to sit there and argue with my partners, they're going to tell me that a high-end Manhattan restaurant that delivers food to an office, and it was a small meeting, and they were able to do it, why would we not want to do it? Fortunately, it was the best decision we made, because our delivery business accounts for approximately 27 or 28% of our total sales. And without it, we wouldn't be here.
Oh, absolutely. Right. Absolutely. And I think that it's interesting when I think about a conversation we had in which you were talking about your real estate financing business.
Yes.
And that, as one would expect, you're surrounded by intelligent people, accomplished people, knowledgeable people. But that when it came to really complex issues, invariably, these folks would kind of look to you to be the guy to figure out how to solve it.
Yeah.
And yet I got the sense that within your restaurant environment, that it wasn't quite the same somehow, even though you're the owner, that your team really could take the ball and run with it without needing to turn to you constantly.
Right. Well,
would you say that's
I would say that in the real estate end of my business, where we do development, we do finance work, there are certain competencies that I had from when I was practicing law that allow me to have that experience that others may not have some familiarity with respect to zoning and things of those nature. When it comes to the restaurant side of it, I say quite often to my team that what I don't know about the business could fill up the Smithsonian.
Yes.
And that I defer to them, who many of them have been in the hospitality industry throughout their entire careers.
Right.
But what I do always try and bridge is whatever they may have done in the past, I ask them why they did it that way. Why was it done that way? And it very well may be that whatever reasoning that they had for doing it, if they looked at it from a different perspective, particularly someone like myself who is an outsider to this business, that it would change their perspective as to maybe going forward in a different way. And one thing that I make sure that I always do, whether it was when I was practicing or I was involved in politics, is I never, ever believe that I know more than someone else, and always willing to learn.
Right.
And I reach out to at least 3 or 4 of my friends who are involved in the restaurant industry, and will constantly call them and ask them their opinion and advice on how they handle certain things. Most recently, we brought on a friend who is a successful restaurateur. He's been involved in this business his entire life. He came here on one Saturday evening, gave 3 or 4 suggestions that have now become part of our process here.
Wow.
And they're little items, but they're little items that will
make a big difference.
Make a big difference for expediency, and I believe will ultimately help grow sales.
Fantastic. I mean, that's really, it strikes me as falling under the category of professional development, really.
Undoubtedly.
Right? So, I think that anyone, or almost anyone, can acquire genre-specific knowledge. But not everyone has the competencies that we've been discussing. And you, Anthony, clearly have them in spades. And I think that's made the, total difference in your experience as a restaurateur.
I think it's certainly the managerial experience that I've honed from a very young age, young age. I think I started managing my first group when I was about 20 years old, 22 years old, and being able to understand that you really can't lead people unless you understand what it is that they're doing.
Right.
And letting them know that you're there arm in arm with them, side by side, and you're not afraid to ask somebody who you may be managing for help.
Right.
I think it goes a long way. And I believe that the team we have here, there's a mutual respect for one another.
Yes.
That helps, that they understand that when I ask them a question, it's because I don't know the answer. And if I'm asking them to do something, it's because I believe in what I'm asking them to do will only help them. And I've been blessed in that respect that I have a team that has followed my philosophy. And I think I told you this the last time, that I told them very early on, if you follow my lead, I believe this could be a tremendous business for all of us that we could all enjoy.
Exactly.
And I think I mentioned last time, we have our head delivery person has been with us for about 9 years, and he follows my philosophy and often will tell me how surprised he is from when he first came here, the growth of the delivery program.
Right.
He's blown away by how much it's grown, but he's part of that success.
That's right.
Because he bought in, followed that philosophy,
Yes.
and understands how important it is to bring a correct package to someone's house, to make sure that it's there in a timely fashion, to make sure you're courteous to the person on the phone when you're taking the order, to make sure that you're offering them help when they need it. And as a result, that business has grown, and he's been a major part of that success.
Exactly. Actually, that's a super segue, I think, into the next part of our exploration, which has to do with the approaches and philosophies you brought to the restaurant and continue to develop while here. And one of what I think are the hallmarks of your restaurant that I think is very striking is the absence of a more traditional type hierarchy, and viewing your employees as colleagues and team members. And it's an egalitarian work environment where everyone, from what you have told me, assumes multiple roles. So how do you prepare your employees to take on multiple roles? And thinking back to your example with the gentleman who runs the delivery section, how do they wind up buying into your way of operating and your way of thinking?
You have to let your actions speak for your philosophy. There's at no given time, if I am here, I'm taking deliveries, I'm answering phones, I'm in the kitchen expediting food, shopping in the morning to make sure that the kitchen has everything that they need to prepare for the day. So I think when people see that there is not a caste system here where you have a manager, a general manager, a bar manager, a delivery manager. Restaurants for far too long
Yeah.
have bought into this, caste system where there's this, everyone has a title. There are no titles here. There's just no titles. There are certain people that may have certain more responsibilities than other, but I don't go out and declare somebody in charge. I will sit there and say, in my absence, if one of these three people ask you to do it, assume that it's me asking, but it's never done in a totalitarian way or in a way in which we're dictating. It's done in a way so that they understand that it's someone who's buying into what I want for the overall good of the business. And believe me, I get pushback. We have one person on our team who I've known since second grade. And she beats up on me at any given moment to say to me, that's not how other places do it. And I say, I get it, I understand. But we're still standing and we've been here a while. So I have never really bought into the caste system that is prevalent in most restaurants. You go into a restaurant and they'll say to you, yeah, we have a manager, a general manager, an assistant manager, a bar manager, a kitchen manager. And I sit there and I say, yeah, at what point is it too top heavy?
Right.
And why do you need all that?
Right.
If you have the right team in place, you shouldn't need to have all of this hierarchy. So I've never bought into it, and it is a different approach. And I think whenever we bring on somebody new, it's a little confusing because some people like to have that very structured environment so that they think that they have, I guess, a very set menu, so to speak, as to what their responsibilities are. And I like to do it a lot differently. I look at it as all one unit.
Right.
And it means if a server has to answer a phone to take a delivery order, that's important to my business. It's important to how he grows his business because you never know who's on the other end of that phone. So I'll give you an example. I was in a restaurant yesterday, and I won't name the restaurant, but I was sitting there. It wasn't particularly busy. A phone was ringing, and the servers were walking past the phone and walking past the phone, and the phone must have rang about 10 times before finally a person who must have appeared to be someone in charge went over and answered the phone. And I said, that would be so disconcerting if I saw that in my restaurant. And the reason being is that, you don't know who is on the other end of that phone. It could be someone saying, hey, I want to come in and I'm a table of 15 people. And what if they would have hung up? The server could have very easily answered that phone. But they develop these structured environments where they want everyone to have a very structured work responsibilities.
They're silos, basically.
And silos is the right word, and I just have never, wanted to get into that because if you do that, one, you're going to have to bring in way too much personnel.
Right.
To cover every aspect of it. And ultimately, if you were a true believer in the system, you should agree that a person calling up for a pizza delivery is just as important as a table of 6 people coming in to order a meal for dinner. The reason being is because the person who's ordering pizza on a Thursday night may very well be back here with her husband on Saturday night. And that has been my philosophy since the day we opened, is that I've never sat there and created silos where I wanted a delivery customer to be treated any differently than a person who may be sitting for a business meeting. Because at any one given time, particularly in this geographic area, they become interchangeable. The same person who may be ordering pizza may be an executive over at Pepsi and coming in here for dinner. So I always looked at it from that perspective, never to want to believe that a person ordering a pizza is any different from than a person sitting in a dining room.
So in essence, it's really another iteration of the same concept, this egalitarian way of looking at it. And now that I think about it, it seems to me that in that kind of egalitarian environment, it is likelier for the employees who are taking on many roles, I would think, to have a better, deeper, broader understanding of the business from a macro standpoint, and therefore be likelier to buy in.
Correct.
Because they do understand and see how this is working. Maybe this is going back to our question earlier of being able to see big picture as well as the smaller elements. And I wonder if, in fact, your approach in this manner gives them that opportunity to start to develop that way of thinking.
It
perhaps.
does, and I'll tell you what, it's also a litmus test for me and the rest of the team that's here, because when certain people come through the door that it may want to work here, some people come in with a very rigid, I'm a server, I know everything about serving, and they may be the best server in the world, but they may not work here.
Right.
And the reason
Right.
being is because I need someone who can be like an interchangeable part. So I often say that probably the most difficult job here is probably being a host or a hostess. And the reason why I say that is because you're answering phones, taking delivery orders, taking takeout orders, taking reservations, seating people, making sure if a person needs to wait, how you're keeping them comfortable. And it is literally putting yourself into the frying pan on any given basis. And you talk about working in a confusing, hostile environment. Be a host or a hostess here on any given night. When the phone's ringing, you're making sure that the delivery personnel is taking out the right packages. You know, those mistakes will happen in any restaurant. Making sure that when someone's coming in to pick up their to-go bag, they're picking up the right bag. You're almost doing 3 jobs in one. And whenever we have someone who's coming in new to train, I often will say, let them train with you. Because if they were a server in another restaurant, there's not much of a difference in terms of training between a table here and a table in another restaurant. They need to be able to buy into our approach.
Right.
And will they be comfortable answering a phone? Will they want to do that? Some people sit there and say, no, I'm coming in and I have one purpose and one purpose only. And that person won't be here for a long time. And that's just that simple.
That's right. And it struck me that you had said, with regard to the consideration of bringing in new employees, that one of the first things you do is watch them on a telephone.
Correct.
Because, and I made my little list here, and you're thinking about the phone, and then you realize, oh yeah, they learn how to take a reservation.
Yep.
They learn the ordering process from a technological standpoint with a computer. They learn how to book a party. They learn how to deal with a complaint. So right there with the telephone, they are wearing multiple hats.
Correct. How do they handle themselves when a person's asking them certain questions? Are they being courteous? Are they giving an informed answer? Are they just rushing the person off the phone? It's a first litmus test as to how they will assimilate into our environment. And real quick. first of all, you could tell whether or not they're technologically proficient in using the POS system, the point of sale system.
Right.
Because you can say whatever you want on a resume, right? But until you see the person in action, then you really learn who and what they are.
Yes. Yes.
And so I always say that to me is always our best barometer to learn whether or not a person's going to be able to assimilate into our environment. Because even at lunchtime here, to digress for a moment, we have a full service pizza counter. So you can come in at lunchtime and order a slice of pizza, and you could have tables in the dining room, and you could have people at the bar, and you could have people calling for a delivery order, and people calling to make a reservation. Just imagine the different steps that I just discussed with you. If a person is not willing to do more than just wait on a table, it's never going to work being here, because here there are too many different businesses within the business that are going on.
Yes.
And it's a testament to the team that we have that they all understand how important everything is. And there's no better feeling for me that when I come in, and they say, "Oh, it was a really busy day. We sold a lot of slices of pizza." And understand that may not have turned into that server maybe making any gratuity off of that, because they just come in to get a slice of pizza. But they'll sit there and say, "It was really busy at the counter. We may have been a little slow in the dining room. We sold a lot of slices, and we told the people that we have music on Thursday night. They had never been here before, and they want to come back on Thursday night." And when I hear that type of colloquy, I realize that at that point they got it.
Yes.
They understood. Or someone came in for a slice. They said, "You know what? I'm going to grab a beer." And they say, "What a great bar you have here." And then they say, "Yeah, we have entertainment, and we're entertainment on Thursday. Now we have entertainment on Wednesday." And they say, "I'm going to come back." Well, we just did an awesome effort in making sure that we checked all the boxes of all the different revenue centers that we have here come together.
Right. And constantly looking for ways to cultivate that repeat customer.
Yeah, and it's not easy. It's not easy because, at the end of the day, people need to make money. They need to be compensated. And it may very well be that a person just coming in for a slice, they're not going to really be able to make any money on that particular customer
At
that moment. So you may not have the same personality as you would if you went over to a table, so to speak. But our team is not that way. They look at it as it's so important to make sure everybody leaves here happy, because you never know when someone's going to come back and book that party, or come back on a Saturday night with their family. And it happens so often.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it just happens so often, and I say it all the time. A mom may come in with her, 2 kids on a Tuesday night, get herself a glass of wine and a salad, and her children are having a slice of pizza, and Thursday night she's back here with her girlfriends with the band, and on Saturday night she's back with her husband having dinner, and Sunday she's here with her whole family having dinner. If I tell you that scenario happens so often here, and
I know that was your goal at one point.
It was, and it has happened so often, and to know that my team realizes that is such a rewarding experience for me.
Yeah.
And I think you could attest to seeing my team in action.
Absolutely.
How they know most of the customers that walk through the door here.
Indeed they do.
And the reason why they know is because they're here as often as they are, and it's the same people that are here. It's the same personnel that's here all the time. So it really has worked out wonderfully.
Well, that does shade into the next area I wanted to talk to you about, which is another hallmark of your business, is the experience of your team as being part of a family, how did you facilitate that particular kind of atmosphere with them?
Well, look, we're a family-owned business. My mom is here, starts from her, and my father. They're here. They're here. Whether it be that, my father will be here, and if he sees somebody waiting, he's going to be 80 in September. He will go over to that customer to make sure they're okay. And could I buy you a glass of wine? My mother is here, and she's promoting the restaurant. She's here baking most of the desserts here. As you know, my mother makes from scratch.
Yes.
And when you see something like that, and you know that you're putting in that type of effort, the team buys in.
Yeah.
When they're able to come over and introduce my mother and say, "Here's Marie. She's it's a family-owned restaurant. She's here. She's baking that pistachio cheesecake that you're having this evening." It creates an environment of family. And so often, we've heard the word, "This place reminds me of Cheers."
Yes.
I just want to, we had a customer one time tell us he was bringing his son across the street to SUNY Purchase for soccer practices. And he would come by the restaurant on Friday evenings while his son was practicing, and he said, he came over to me and he saw me interacting with a lot of different customers, and my mother was there, and he said to me, "How do I become part of the group?" So
Wow,
I said, "You're part of the group. I said, come on in." And it's important to create that feeling with the team as well. So, my mother will come in, and the first thing she does is she's there kissing hello to all of the people that work here. They're helping her bring her bags in to start baking for the day. It's an environment that the way we behave in our own house, under our own roof,
right.
we extend it here.
Yes.
And I am fortunate in that I have a tremendous group of people that I work with, and I do love them as my own family, literally. And it's hard to get to that point, but they literally have become my family.
That's incredible.
Right.
How do you nurture a sense of trust among your employees and between you and your employees? Is that connected in with the cultivation of the sense of family and with them buying into your philosophies? I mean, is all of this sort of connected in a way?
I think it is. I one time had an employee tell me that he was working in a deli, I believe it was, and he said to me that the owner was so belligerent to the people that worked there that at night they would take perfectly good product and just throw it in the garbage. And he claims he was not part of that, and I believe him. And I said, "But why were they doing that?" And they said, "Just to stick it to the owner." Wow. And I said, wow. And look, are there going to be certain things that happen where maybe a person is not being completely honest? I think it's probably the nature of everyone to maybe sometimes do something that may be a bit dishonest. I don't believe I have that problem here. And the reason why I don't believe that's an issue here is because there's a mutual trust. Mm-hmm. And I think when you treat people and you show them you do trust them, they won't take advantage of you. Mm-hmm. And I think that is the cornerstone of any good management system. It's very easy to be that guy where when someone's 10 minutes late because they had to go drop their kid off at school, and you sit there and you say, "Listen, I'm going to dock your pay." You're breeding contempt is what you're doing.
That's right.
You're breeding contempt, and that's true whether it's the corporate world or the restaurant business. And I can't begin to tell you how many times I've had, people who have come on board where they're running late, they got stuck in traffic, they had to make a stop before they came in, and they call me up and they're all concerned, and they're like, I'm going to be 15 minutes, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like, it doesn't move the needle for me.
Right.
Because I know that when you're here, you're working and you're getting the job done.
Absolutely.
And that's much more important to me than sitting there, watching a time clock saying that person's late. Now, obviously, if anything becomes habitual, you have to address it.
Right.
But I think that if you give enough leeway and you're able to have a good eye on who you're bringing in, people are just not going to take advantage of it. It's just not going to do it. And I'm blessed in that way, I guess. I'm blessed that I've never had that situation since I have been in full control with my family here.
Right.
We've not had that issue. We've had it in the past. We've had people take advantage when I had someone else managing the operation here. But we've been blessed that that has not happened to us.
Well, I think that shades into something that you have explained to me on multiple occasions, which is that your restaurant is not typical of the industry with regard to employee rules and benefits. Correct.
I'm a big believer in making sure that they do get vacations, paid vacations. I'm a big believer in making sure that if someone's sick or they had a child care issue, that they get paid. It's very uncommon in the restaurant industry.
Yes.
Very, very
Yes.
uncommon. You get paid for the days that you work, and when you don't work, you're out of luck. Again, a very archaic way of operating, and certainly
Yes.
different than my prior career in law.
Yes.
And having worked in government. There's going to come times where people just have an issue, where they maybe didn't feel well that day. Something came up.
It's human.
And it's human. And I think one of the things that we've been able to accomplish here is that we've been able to bring that humanity into this industry, which these stories are legendary.
Oh boy.
In terms
I
of
bet.
what I've heard from people who have worked here with me as to what happened in prior locations where they were, where employers were not paying them, and 6, 7 weeks, 8 weeks. Imagine not getting a paycheck for 8 weeks. How do you explain that when you go home to your wife and your children and or your husband, and you sit there and explain that I didn't get paid again this week? And I often say to them, well, why did you stay? Well, I needed the job, and he promised me he was going to pay me next week, or they promised me they would pay me next week. And too many times I just shake my head, and I just wonder how that owner puts their head on the pillow at night, knowing that these are the people that are helping build your business.
Right. Well, they're not you.
Well,
you couldn't put your head on.
No,
the pillow
I
at night.
couldn't, and I couldn't. I wouldn't be able to do it.
And I think, in some way, shape, or form, your employees know that.
I think so.
Like any family, your team, I imagine, wrestles with certain issues and dysfunction. When that happens, how does it feel to you, and how do you handle that?
I try to adhere to a very laissez-faire approach. I don't really like to get involved unless I really have to get involved, only because, again, I feel because we don't have that caste system here of having the layers of management, they realize that if they bring it to me and I am the arbiter of that problem, someone's going to be unhappy. Someone's going to leave unhappy. And then at that point, they're going to feel I'm picking sides. And now I have, remember, we're a close-knit group here.
Right,
It's
right.
not, we're 1,000 employees, we're maybe 19, 20 employees. And if I choose for this one particular person, it's going to create contempt. So I tell them quite often, work it out. Don't let me work it out. If I work it out, it's not going to be a good situation.
Interesting.
So I've allowed complete deference to both the front of the house and the back of the house and our pizza station and our delivery guys. Scheduling, figure it out. Figure it out. I don't want to be the guy to choose who gets certain days off, because if I do it, someone's going to be upset. I said, but I can get involved. If I get involved, though, just understand it's going to be my way, and it's not going to be something that maybe not everyone walks away happy. So
Right.
work it out amongst yourselves. And I believe that approach has also helped. I believe a lot of the times they've come from this hospitality industry where things are dictated to them. This is what you're going to do, and they don't allow them to have any sense of freedom or flexibility. And as a result, again, it breeds contempt.
And might all of these things we've been speaking about be responsible for the fact that it seems as if your employees are not really competing with one another for your attention and your validation, as I think you at one point had an employee who was fomenting those kinds of feelings, and that didn't work out, but that you clearly value each individual, and you clearly validate each individual as part of your daily work, as it were. So I would wonder if that really, again, helps facilitate a team feeling and ease perhaps what in many other places is a kind of natural competitiveness amongst themselves.
Undoubtedly. There is no environment more competitive or hostile than in a kitchen. Right. And what I have done here is, of course, there's someone that's in charge, and that person is someone who obviously has my trust and confidence. But what I've often said, and everyone has bought into, is allow everyone to be creative. You never know who may be starting out as a salad guy today, and 10 years from now, he's a chef somewhere.
Sure.
And if we're able to capitalize on that creativity, it makes me look better, it makes the kitchen look better, it makes the restaurant look better.
You're right.
So, again, totally different and contrarian to the restaurant industry. It is very, very rare that you will hear an owner tell the kitchen, everybody come up with a special.
Right.
Because, again, in that caste system environment, you are usurping the powers of someone who's supposedly in charge, and that's undermining them. And a lot of times people don't buy into that philosophy.
Right.
Where I look at it is that I say, no, that person who you may look at as only as a line cook may know how to make a really tremendous dish. And I'd like him to put it on our menu. And if people like it, well, guess what? We just were able to satisfy a customer. We made that line cook feel really good about himself because he was able to take his creativity and show it off.
Right.
He was able to satisfy myself. And again, creates a very natural, helpful work environment. Does not happen in this industry. If you go and speak to other restaurants, they will not. You have a chef, the chef makes the specials. The chef tells you what you're going to make. We don't do that here. Just don't do it, because I don't believe in that system of structure to that degree, because I think what you're doing is you're taking the legs out from underneath somebody.
And by taking the approach you do, I feel that you create a fertile ground for creativity.
Undoubtedly.
Then there's so many more opportunities to nurture it and give it air.
Yes.
So, just as your colleagues feel that they are part of a family, so too do your customers, as we have begun to talk about. And I think I would say this is legendary about this restaurant. Can you describe specifically the things that you do to create that atmosphere? And could you kind of even take us through, if I am a new customer, for example, and I'm walking in the door, what will I experience in all the different ways that will make me feel like, wow, God, I want to be a part of this. I want to come back.
Well, first of all, we welcome everyone to come by. That's the first thing.
Yes.
What you will see 9.5 times out of 10, if you're walking through the door here for the first time and you see other guests here, is somebody hugging or kissing them hello. Knowing who they are, being able to remember what beverage they like, maybe going over to them, explaining to them what dessert specials my mother made that day that they're fond of. A genuine interaction between our team and the guest, determining whether or not this is their first time here. And when they are first time here, letting them know what we do special. Letting them know about our entertainment on Thursdays. Letting them know we deliver. Letting them know all the different things that we do, but doing it organically, not as a sales pitch. Just so you understand, there's a distinct difference between sitting there.
And it can be a fine line.
Oh, without a doubt, between sitting there and reading off a page saying, by the way, we do this, this.
Right.
That doesn't work. It has to be done organically. And again, that's where it starts, I believe, with myself. And it has been bought in by the team that we have downstairs, where they sit there and they organically engage with the customer. And I often say, you may not get here the sophisticated drinks list that you get in another restaurant, or you may not get the sophisticated server who's going to remember the proper mannerism of pouring a glass of wine. But what you're going to get here is someone who's authentic and is going to know you when you leave here, and they're going to care about your experience, and they're going to develop a relationship with you.
Right.
I'll just circle back to what we talked about a few weeks ago. We talk about Des downstairs.
Yes.
Right. Here's someone who has been with me 9 years, 8 or 9 years. She met her fiance here. She's getting married here in September, and most of the I would say I shouldn't say most. I would say at least 50% of the guests that have been invited are relationships that she developed here in the restaurant.
Wow.
So now if that is not a better indicator for you, so you ask me, if you're a first-time guest when you walk in here, well, I turn the question back to you and I say, well, I'm going to give you this scenario. You tell me what you would see. Because this person started with me 9 years ago, and you come full circle, and she's going to be getting married here. to a customer that she met here. And again, she didn't see him the first day and fall in love with the guy. This was a relationship that transpired organically. He was a customer here for quite some time. And eventually, they must have figured out a way to go out, obviously. But it wasn't that this guy came through the door and swept her off her feet.
Right.
He was a customer, interacted with her regularly, and then eventually got to this point. So I can't ask for a more organic scenario than that.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
And also, I recall there's one additional piece that sounds as if it definitely plays a part in all of this, which is that you are a resident of this area. And so I don't know what percentage of your clientele, but I would imagine a decent percentage are people that you know from outside of the restaurant.
Yes. So we know a lot of the community, the Perch community that comes through the door, and the Rybrook community. You know, we have 2 children that came through the school system.
Exactly.
They played youth sports. They were involved in, Ava was involved in soccer. She was involved in dance. So we got to know a lot of the families in the area. And obviously, we've hosted many of those families here after those sporting events. You know, for no other reason, again, organically. It didn't happen because we were saying, hey, we want to go and market our restaurant and bring back 30 kids after a baseball game. But when that happens and they are part of a family environment and they're sitting here and they realize, on top of everything else, we serve good food, you know, that always helps. They're going to figure out a way to continue the relationship here. So they're sitting there and they're ordering delivery. They're coming back for their families and friends events. And all that has grown exponentially over the years. So clearly we're at an advantage of living here in the neighborhood, which allowed people to come in. But remember, there's also a heightened awareness when that happens. So you live in the neighborhood and you are heightened to the fact that when there's a mistake, you also don't want that mistake to ripple and have a ripple effect. So it's a fine line. You have to be real careful in terms of how you handle it. And I think it probably keeps you on your toes a little bit more.
I was going to say, absolutely.
Yeah.
Anthony, this is so fascinating, you know, certainly to me, and I'm sure to those who are watching. So we are going to continue to explore Anthony's approaches and philosophies, most of which are unique to him, in our next videocast. And also, we will begin to essentially dissect Anthony's business operations.
Yes.
So we look forward to having you with us when we do that. And thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
And please join us next week. Have a good day.